Welcome to the North Tonawanda Football Hall of Fame YouTube channel. My name is Helinski. Glad you could join us here today. One of the finest families, football families in North Tonawanda history, the Montesantis. John, Joe, and Dan Montesanti. Guys, thank you so much for joining me here today on the North Tonawanda YouTube channel. How's things in your neck of the woods this morning?
Doing wonderful. Thanks,
Outstanding,
Ed. Thanks
Ed.
for having us.
Yep, thanks, Ed.
The Montesanti family, group of running backs, defensive backs, linebackers, quite the family in North Tonawanda football history. John, I want to start with you. Let's talk about your football career at North Tonawanda. I know you played in the 1974 and 1975 seasons, and you played under Chuck Ramsey. What do you recall from those days?
Well, it starts back in 1966 because I heard Billy Janowski on one of these things talking about how important that Little League football was for us back in the mid-'60s, early '70s. We used to play across from the Payne Avenue High School there, Vetter Field, and every Friday night it was a thrill just to still be practicing and watching the varsity bus go by. And we just wanted to be like them. So in 1974, I was on the varsity, played both ways. Chuck Ramsey, we started out, we were 2-2, and the season wasn't looking that great. But all of a sudden there was a change, and we wound up going 6-2 and sharing the title. We beat Kenmore East. That's probably the best game that I think I played in. It was so exciting. It was a 17-14 win. Jackie Boers kicked the field goal. Back in those days, we didn't have kicking field goals was an unheard of thing. And for us to do that, to win that game was phenomenal. I think Kenmore East was number 1 in the state at that time. So to take down a power like that was really cool. The 75 season was my senior season. We did well. We didn't do as well as we wanted to do. But certainly starting off, Chuck Ramsey was a great coach. You had Chuck Williams, Dave Anastasi, and you had Vona and Tedder were on those teams. And what a bunch. The most important thing about playing football is hanging out with the guys. And those 2 years, those two teams, those are some of my lifelong friends, and you never forget that.
You did play with a cast of characters in those 2 seasons. Guys like John Rossi, Edgy Skavinsky, Stan Russin, John Laper, Billy Janowski. You mentioned the late great Jackie Boers. When you see each other, run across each other socially, does it automatically go back to the old football days?
Of course. Charlie, Mai, and John Rossi I see on a regular basis. Our wives, the 6 of us, we do a lot together. And we're always kidding Rossi about pulling guard, pulling the wrong way, couldn't get out of his own way. But John Rossi was a tri-captain, and he was a hell of a football player. Charlie Mai, he wants to tell you a bigger story than it was, but Charlie was a hell of a linebacker. I think he went on and played at Canisius during those days. And Johnny Laper, what else can you say about Johnny Laper? You know, goes on to Ithaca and becomes a little All-American. Fabulous, wins a national championship. Probably one of the best linebackers I ever played against, and I played against some guys that wound up playing in the pros. And I think that highly of John Laper.
I want to go to the boys now. Your turn. Growing up, were you guys like nudged, encouraged, maybe pushed into following in your dad's footsteps with football, either on the local level or first and then onto high school?
We were definitely, football was always a passion of ours, you know, spending Sundays watching the games in the NFL, you know, with our old man. He actually pulled us out of Little League. We were what, 6 or 7? He pulled us out because he was afraid of us getting hurt. So we didn't end up going back until 8th grade, but we did get a couple years in with Bloomfield, Tuzo, Charsley, those kind of guys that we ended up winning the state championship one. So we were nudged, but we weren't forced in any way. You know, we took our time to get over there. That's for sure.
What do you recall about the early days of playing football at North Tonawanda?
Yeah, early days. I remember NCAA. That's where it starts. Playing on the Giants, like they were saying, we played with Derek Bloomfield and Shreve, and we had our coach Tony Baker, and we were running the triple option. So that's where it started. I remember, and we had a little playbook that was similar to the one that we got in high school, and that's where the fun kind of began. And then, like Danny said, we kind of didn't play for a little bit until we got to like 7th and 8th grade, and then going into high school. We just spent a lot of time playing against each other, playing with the kids in the neighborhood, and then you end up, the kids in the neighborhood end up being on your team with you, which was something, we went to a private school, so we didn't really know much about, we knew the importance of the high school football because we grew up in North Tonawanda with, in the neighborhood with like Adam Dagler, and my older brother had tons of friends who also played. So it was we knew what the vibe was like, but we weren't, we'd go to all the games, but you don't really know it because we were at a private school. And then you come over to the high school and we're like, oh, this is legit. This is, the crowds are there and the players are there and the coaches
we used to get dropped off at the weight room, 8th grade. We used to get dropped off at 2:30 and then you would pick us up after. So that's really how it started for us, is that we would leave St. Christopher's on the Boulevard, get dropped off at the North Tonawanda weight room. Jancy would give us an earful and tell us to get to work. And Charsley actually met us over from the middle school.
Yeah, we had a lot of kids
So
that would come over
we had
there
about 7, 8th graders.
That's where I think it started.
Yeah.
John, did you ever realize or come to think how good these guys were going to be?
Yeah, I hate to sound saying yes because now it's, hindsight, but they're talking about the one year that they played Little League football. And on the same team, it was Derek, these two guys, the Shreve brothers, and a couple other guys that were on that team. And I had coached with Eric Jancy at the JV level for a couple of years. And I went over to Eric and I said, you know what? There's a group of kids coming up, and they're pretty damn good. I think you're going to like them. And I remember saying that to Jancy, and he just smiled in that Jancy fashion, and he just nodded his head. And then that's kind of when I pulled these guys out and said, okay, look, you're going to just go to the high school. You're going to start lifting weights, and we'll see what happens from there. But, I mean, they're very athletic. I mean, that whole group of kids, they're just phenomenal, hence is why 2009 happened.
I want to go to that 2009 season. Early on in preseason, your quarterback, Mike Tuzo, made a statement to the Tonawanda News that you guys were going to win the state championship. What was the reaction of the team at that point? I mean, it's great to have that confidence, but it's kind of like a quiet thing as opposed to publicly stated and have it put in print.
Yeah,
what was your reaction to that?
I played on the 2008 team, and we were really talented. We had a lot of guys who, of course, moved up to the 2009 team. But, we set the bar high, as did all the coaches and all the other players. And I think after we lost to Orchard Park and we kind of had been in a rut versus a couple of those better teams, coming up, and we wanted to beat everybody, and we knew we could. We had a lot of good talent, and we were disciplined, and we were doing it the lumberjack way. Team first, getting in the weight room, working hard. Doing all the things right. So, I mean, Tuzo, when you say that, I'm like, what else are you looking to do? That's what the goal is.
That isn't your goal, then you're on the wrong spot.
Yeah, so that's kind of the whole team. He was just, of course, the leader of the team, saying hey, well, this is the expectation. If we're not going to meet it, then we're not. Then what are we out here doing? Why are we practicing? 100 days a year. You know.
And we also had a chip on our shoulder because what was it, previous 3 years we lost to Orchard Park at Ralph Wilson, and we knew that we had potential to go to that next level, and we knew that our first obstacle was that game at Ralph Wilson, get on out of Western New York. And so we knew going in that we put in all the work. I mean, we were at summer clinics, hours and hours and hours, and just working on the fundamentals. And so that expectation was there, and we knew it was going to happen. But we still played with a chip on our shoulder in the sense that we didn't want to settle for being second best anymore. And so that was kind of the mentality we had.
I want to go back. I want to go to those Indiana camps. What do you remember about those Indiana summer camps?
Oh, the hardest hitting quarterback that those guys down south never saw. Got a team Gatorade from it.
We went twice. Once when we were really young, I think it was like our 8th grade year going into high school. And I think my fondest memory was walking into camp and, where I was nervous. I think I didn't even want to go. Sitting in my dad's house the night before, I was so nervous. And then I show up to camp, and of course there's 3 colored jerseys, and they give me the varsity color. And I'm like, oh no, this isn't good. This isn't good. I'm scared shitless. And scared. And, luckily I ended up playing with all the guys my age. And I think that was the first time we really had a good experience with all the kids we had grown up playing with. And it was fun, seeing how the older guys did things,
It's also a good experience to get out of state and play with kids that we're not familiar with, and knowing that we can hang with them and hit with them and play I think that led to the beginning of that confidence that Tuzo had, was that, hey, we're out of state and we're still playing really, really good football. It kind of carried on.
John, during that 2009 season, when the Lumberjacks started to pick up speed during that, and they actually started destroying a lot of teams with that triple option. What was your thoughts on something like that? Was with Tuzo's statement, could it become a reality? Was it more believable each and every game?
Nah, not until as we got closer. The first game at Jamestown, if you remember that, Charlie Mai and I, we went down and Joey didn't pick up the kickoff. And we're going, Joey, that's a live football. And it was just, what's going on? and Charlie and I are going, well, this isn't boding well. And then it was a tough first half, if you recall that game. And I'm going, well, okay, let's just see how they build on this. And Ed, you've been around sports enough. We're gray enough. We're old enough. You know that chemistry and that momentum and all those factors, besides having great talent, has to come to fruition. And so we saw that momentum building every game. And as it started destroying teams, as you said, and they started playing error-free, it became a little more believable. And then I think we played, didn't we? Orchard Park didn't go to the Ralph. You guys played those guys earlier, right? Because you actually played Lancaster. And every day before the game, I'd have to have a little talk with the boys. And I just remember saying, one of you guys have to be a game changer. Because when you start getting to those levels of games, it hinges on a turnover here, a great play there. And, I think I have a little wisdom. I couldn't tell them how to play because they're much better players than I ever was. So they started making those plays, and it became a little believable.
Making a really big play.
Danny had that turnover. Yeah. But that one started it.
Before we fast forward to the Carrier Dome, what sticks out in your mind during that season, Dan and Joe, that 2009 season?
What really stuck out for me, that I think that made us a lot better than most teams is our depth. I mean, we had a junior class that was extremely dedicated. I mean, I'm talking about Jake Brock, Josh Kern, Travis Charsley, Ryan Dagler, Rob Wachowski, Jordan Mars, Colin O'Donnell. I mean, you're talking to Joe Medina. I mean, you're talking about 10, 15 guys that really contributed to the success of our team and how deep we were and just dedicated. I think having that young class that got to watch everyone before them and that dedication, that's what really, I think, made the difference, is that we weren't carried by seniors. We were a full meshed team, and we were very deep. Our second, third string players could compete with the best athletes in the state. And what was it? Cujo went down and Medina stepped up. I mean, and then Medina went down and the Devin Malcher. I mean, we had depth all over the place. And that's what really stuck out to me was how well prepared our entire roster was to handle adversity. And I think that's what really set us apart from all the other squads that we played.
Does all that credit go to Coach Dancy?
Yeah, I mean, the whole coaching staff in general, Rick, Tom, O'Brien, Cook, Zayats. I mean, it was never really said, but it was understood that we're only as good as our weakest link. And I think that really drove the team to kind of perform at a cohesive level, was that, you know, we're one unit and we're going to get to the finish line together, or we're going to fall together. And yeah, so and Jancy oversees that. So yeah, it comes down to Jancy and the coaching staff that we all had a role to play, and everybody was happy playing their role because we knew it was going to lead to our success.
You played a couple of sectional games in Rochester, and then came to the Carrier Dome. What were if you can remember, what were your thoughts of making that 3-hour bus trip to Syracuse from North Tonawanda?
Yeah.
I don't think I ate all day.
Yeah.
I was nervous. Called him 4 times.
We went down the night before. Got a hotel room, which was really cool. And we had a little dinner the night before. And just driving down there, you know, the anticipation of the game was just, we were all looking forward to it. You know, obviously, I think everybody's a little nervous, but, you know, I think we were just so prepared. I mean, if you're prepared, you're not as nervous. You know, going into this, we were just beating teams and beating tough teams and good. Team. And well, I mean, you know, we just went out there and played and at the Dome. But I'm just saying, leading up to it, we were definitely prepared. And I think, you know, we had taken some shots on the chin and first Webster Schroeder and Baldwinsville. And we played some, and you know, we weren't blowing out anybody anymore. So we knew we really had to play a tough game. But you know, we were prepared. That was one of my favorite part about the run is, you know, you play so much football, 10 weeks of football, getting to the Dome or getting to the stadium, and you're practicing 2 hours a day. And then, you know, you start getting later on the season and our practices are, you know, almost 50 minutes because we're executing everything. And, you know, the coaches never beat us up on anything. We're doing all the right stuff. So we were prepared. Yeah, we were prepared. And I think that was.
I don't even think we had any contact the last couple of weeks of the season. It was just repetition of where to be on the field. And
definitely.
I didn't have any butterflies going in that game. I knew exactly where I needed to be, and speaks to the preparation of the coaching staff.
And if I could, I told you earlier that I would give those guys a little talk before each game leading up to up to the stadium game or the Dome game. And the last one, I said, geez, guys, I don't know what to tell you. And Danny says, Dad, we're not going to go 12-1. We're going to go 13-0.
But we had a little bit of swagger. It comes with playing good football. You catch a groove and all of a sudden you think you're the best. And when you think you're the best and you're playing like you're the best, you end up winning.
You face a very good New Rochelle team. You knocked out their quarterback with a broken ankle or a lower body injury, whatever you want to call it. Dan, you had 7 tackles in that game, along with Derek Bloomfield and Shawn McDonough. Joe, you end up tossing the winning touchdown to Derek Bloomfield. Want to talk about the touchdown pass? Was that type of play? Has that become a jump ball situation for Derek to go get it because of his athleticism?
I always get a lot of heat for this because in an interview after the game, I said, you know, the minute I threw it, I knew it was good. Like I knew he was going to catch it. And it wasn't probably the best throw I've ever thrown, but I'm not a great thrower. But I have to laugh because, you know, something this guy taught us, and just like our coaches and everybody, you go to the stadium and you just visualize going into these games and you play every play over and over in your bed and you're thinking of the game and you're nervous. And I had seen me play the whole game a couple times. So, you know, when I knew I threw that in my dreams, call it, and I knew it came down good. So that's why I said that. But I will say that was not exactly the pass I should have thrown, but Derek made a hell of a catch.
I mean, yeah, when you're throwing it to an athlete like Derek, you just got to get it close.
You just can't.
You don't have to
throw it out
of
the back of the end zone.
Yeah,
that's all.
It's just got to be close. Derek's going to go up and get it. I mean, the kid's a phenomenal athlete, and he always has been. I remember when we were playing baseball. You know, you just got to get it close to Derek.
And I saw these guys play from the age of 8 on up. And I've seen a lot of good athletes in my day. And there's a handful of those kids that I think are some of the best I've ever seen.
Everybody on the team is great to play with.
You guys score with a little less than 9 minutes left in the game. You can see you're still playing a very good opponent, even with their backup quarterback, with New Rochelle. Defensively, Dan, what was the mindset on the Lumberjack team about trying to preserve that lead and that victory?
Just playing your role. I mean, Rick Tom, he ran a pretty tight ship, and there was always a healthy competition between the offense and defense, because Rick was defensive minded and Eric was offensive minded, and it was who's going to carry the team to victory. And in the earlier half of the season, it was really the defense or the offense that carried the team. I mean, we were putting up 40, 60 points every game. And then when you get down to those playoff games, it was kind of the defense that started picking it up and carrying the team. So it was just cool, calm, collected. We know we've been here. We've been waiting to prove Jancy that we're the better unit. So let's just show up and do it.
Coming down to that, the final drive by New Rochelle, where you guys stopped them, cold on 4 plays with less than 2 minutes to go. John, I want to ask you, what was your thought? What was your going through your mind at that point, knowing that victory was imminent?
Well, it didn't seem imminent, Ed, because I've been around and it's never over until it's over. And so you don't know what trick play they have. You don't know where they're going to catch a kid out of position. And then they started picking on Danny, and they run twice over to his side, I think, and he stuffs both of them. And, they were a big team. And Danny did what he had to do, and that 3rd, 4th down stops. Then I started breathing a little bit.
Guys, what were your thoughts on something like that last 2 minutes?
I mean, my whole defensive career was, Joe, don't let anybody score. Don't let anybody get behind you. I wasn't, they put me back there, and my job was to make sure I didn't let anybody get past me. And that's what that was going through my head, play deep and make sure everything stays underneath you. And luckily it didn't even get didn't even get past our defensive line or linebacker unit. So it was pretty easy for me.
I felt a lot of relief when Shawn batted down that final ball. I remember running over to Joey and just saying, it's over. We did it, because there is a high level of stress that comes with, bringing a city, especially a football heavy city such as we are. It reminds me of, small town ball or, down in Texas, with the city takes a lot of pride in the football team. And there was a lot of pressure and a lot of late nights working film. And this is stuff that it was 6 years in the making. And I just remember feeling a lot of relief. It's over. We did it. We gave the city something. And I felt a lot of pride. So it was a great experience. I don't know how to sum it up.
What do you recall Coach Jancy telling you after the game?
Me, I think he said something like, he said something smart to me.
Yeah.
He goes, all that talking, he said, all that talking I heard you do for 14 weeks here, you finally backed it up or something like that. And then, he pulled me and Joey aside and, Jancy, he made us feel very fortunate, that this was something that we're going to remember forever.
Yeah,
and so he was just very grateful, and he passed that towards us, and it made it a really special experience.
Once you hit the city limits coming back, you had a police escort to the high school.
Yeah.
You had the community get together at the Riviera. You also then went to the state capitol to be honored by the New York State Assembly. What do you recall about all that hoopla and all that attention and notoriety that you guys got?
I think, the Lumberjack way, I think I said earlier, is just like a team first thing. So, I don't think any like individual I know, you get a lot of attention when you're scoring touchdowns or doing whatever, we were doing, throwing the game winning pass. But I think it doesn't really, it was that team first mentality. I don't think it was just such a nice, I don't know. Yeah, it was just, you feel the camaraderie. It's just hanging out with the guys who you just work so hard with. And it was nice to have some like time to kind of sit back and like Danny said, there was no pressure, and you got to kind of look back and enjoy it, because when you're living in the moment, you don't even know what you're doing. You're 17 years old just playing football, and the next thing you know, you're getting awards and you're doing this, and you don't know how to act. You've never been there before, and nobody teaches you how to be there. So it's kind of like, we are grateful that it was finally like over, and we got to enjoy it with our friends. And of course, now we still enjoy it with our friends. It's something that you'll never not share with one another. So I think it's and it will be like that forever. So that's what's nice about it.
John, from a parent standpoint, what do you recall about that as well, too?
Without getting emotional.
All right, that's got to get cut.
Yeah, we gotta edit that one out. Come on, Monty.
No getting emotional.
It's, what do you say? Great job, guys. You're
All right.
proud.
Want to go to the 2010 season. Guys are coming off a state championship. Joe, you're the quarterback now. Dan, you're the leader on defense. High expectations, probably, by your team at that point. You had a good season, but it probably wasn't what you anticipated. What do you recall about that season?
I think going into it is just a whole different approach. You lost so many great players. I mean, we lost our core on offense and our core on defense. A lot of the guys, I could list them off, but it just, you lose all those cores, so you're trying to find all these missing pieces, and you don't. And yeah, like you have the depth from the season before, but now players are just maybe asked to play a different position, or we also, a couple players didn't play our senior year, which definitely hurt us. And I'm playing a new position, and I never played quarterback my whole life growing up. I was always a running back, and so I think everybody, the expectations are high, but we didn't have an identity yet. So I think that's why we struggled early on. I think we started to find a groove later on in the season, and we moved him to running back, and a 6'2", 235-pound running back. That definitely gave us a little bit more success, giving him the football. Watching him run is just, I loved it. He was just dragging kids all over, and it was just a different season, and it was fun in its own way. But it definitely was trying to find an identity. That's, I think, really what it comes down to for me.
I want to get with all three of you guys. What do you recall about the TNT games that you guys played in?
Who wants to start?
How much better we were.
Yeah, I mean, I remember really
I remember growing up, and we would cross in the Tonawanda
Water
Bridge,
boys,
and my dad would sniff the air. He goes, "You smell that?" And I said, "Oh no, Dad." He goes, "Smells like a city of losers." I mean, so from a young age, we always knew
what the rivalry is.
Yeah. So I mean, they were special moments. Unfortunately, they weren't super competitive games with Tonawanda. But I mean, it wasn't really competitive for the first 9 games of the season with everybody else either, But yeah, just good memories.
The preparation, playing in the 100th game with the
100th game was awesome. Oh my goodness. With 10,000 people sitting there. I mean, it was probably close.
Well, I did play in front of 10,000 at the TNT game, so I can tell you that. And it was competitive. We won that 74 season. We squeaked it out 14-7, I think it was. And they were a real good team. They had a lot of big guys, and it was down in Tonawanda in the old railroad tracks, and eggs being tossed at you. And I mean, it was back in the day, and it was just a lot of fun. And now some of those guys are my best friends. I like the guys from Tonawanda.
Yeah, I know. I've gotten to know a lot of them.
John, do you ever think about if you played high school football on artificial turf, what you would have done? I know you played at Penn on turf, but what you would have done if you would have gotten away from the muddy fields at Tonawanda, or even better.
You mean that rock pile down in Jamestown we used to play on?
Right. And Vetter Stadium could be a little tricky as well, too, because of the crown.
Yeah. No, I don't think back on those terms, but I will say this. The equipment change was mind-blowing to me. I mean, we used to go out there and try to find the biggest pair of shoulder pads, and we had arms full of pads and big thigh pads and big hip pads. And, the more you had, the better it was back in the day. And when I started looking at these guys' equipment, they're their
My
thigh
thigh
pad
about
was
this big.
as big as my knee pad used to be. And I'm going, man, maybe I could have run a 4.5 or something if I had that kind of crap on instead of the stuff we wore.
Charlie used to get yelled at for not wearing any thigh.
I mean,
Viper used to scream at him, Charlie Montesanti, wear your thigh pads. Oh, we don't want to wear them, coach.
I mean, so to me, that was the total change. The field conditions, yeah, but back in the day when we started running on turf, it was concrete, so it wasn't anything like these guys have today.
John, you were inducted into the North Tonawanda Football Hall of Fame back in 1988. Joe, because it's July 1st right now, you're going to go in October later this year. Dan, you're probably not too far behind. What does it mean to you guys to have some of your family members inducted into the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of work goes into that stuff. I mean, everybody takes it for granted that, oh, he was just a good football player, or oh, this, the amount of work that you put in that people don't really see. I think Danny and Joey said it a little earlier. We used to talk about football all the time. And so I think, and play it. And when you get to be inducted into something like that, I think it is a little bit of the feeling I have is, somebody else notices the work I did. And I think that's important. And then to have one son in, and pretty sure he'll get into, that says a lot about the work that we did.
And we're also building a legacy as well, because we're gonna be gone one day, and our kids hopefully are in that. And this is something that generations can share. And I think that's what we pride ourselves on is having it a family ordeal and making it for the next generation.
And I'd be remiss too if I didn't tell you, my father was a pretty damn good football player. In high school, he played 1 year, and his second as a junior, and then came out for his senior year. He was going to be the starting quarterback for one of Better's teams, and he had to have a back operation at age 17. And so he didn't get a chance to play high school football. When he went into the service, he started playing service ball. When he came back, he wound up playing for the Lockport SOs, and he wound up getting a tryout for the original Buffalo Bills. And he had a legitimate shot of playing at that level. So it kind of filtered on down through the family. And we can't talk about this without talking about Sal Motesanti. There's my first cousin, Sal, who's a Hall of Famer, Hall of Fame wrestler. He might have been one of the toughest guys in NT ever. So there's a lot of family pride that goes in with that.
Joe, when you got the phone call from Pete Piscucci with the ballot results, what was going through your mind when he said that you were elected to the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I think, for me, kind of like what he said is, I played for the Lumberjacks for 3 seasons, and I put a lot of hard work into it, and we did all, didn't miss any morning workouts, and we were in the weight room, and I played 3 sports, and we worked all summer long, and we made it to all the camps and clinics, and like Danny mentioned, we had some really good players on my team, and all I remember is I wanted to play football, and if I wanted to play football, you had to work hard because the guys, if you didn't work hard, the guys behind you would take your position. So, I mean, and I just remember working hard, and I think everybody on my team would agree that, I wasn't maybe a great vocal leader, but I definitely set a tone, and I'd go out there and physically I would try to work as hard as I could. And I think that elevated everybody else. And I think a lot of people have noticed that. And that's something I'm proud of going into the Hall of Fame for. And, it's just a really good honor, and I'm happy to join my dad and hopefully Danny. And I think it's all, it took a lot of hard work, and I'm just happy, like my dad said, that people recognize that.
Exactly.
Dan, you live in Tacoma, Washington, a little ways away from home.
Yeah, just a tiny bit.
When you have a conversation with someone and the topic comes up about high school football, what do you tell them about NP football?
So Google it. It's a big surprise because there's a lot of articles about us. No, it is something, and again, it circles back to being a point of pride. You know, I'm very proud. It is hard to win a state championship. It is hard to win 13 games, and there's not a lot of cities, there's not a lot of teams, there's not a lot of players that get to experience that. So it comes with a little bit of ego with it, and I'm very proud when I talk about the Lumberjacks and the Sam from North Tonawanda. It means a lot to me to speak so highly of the program in my city when athletics get brought up out there on the West Coast.
Joe, and I want you to, if you're meeting somebody and you got talking about high school football, what would you tell them about the North Tonawanda program in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to that. Everybody put the team first. I just keep saying that, but it really is true. And when you talk to somebody else and they're like, man, you guys really were something to watch. You guys were super good. And I just say, hey, as a kid growing up, I watched from 2000 to, year 2000, I went to tons of games watching all these different players play. And that's what it's about. These guys helped, all these teams over the years have helped mold us to eventually win a state championship. We couldn't have done it without all these hardworking people building a system for us. And it's hard to explain that to teams who, go through different coaches and go through, we're lucky we had Jancy and these hardworking coaches they were there for 12, 14 years maybe. And a lot of schools don't get to have that. And we were really fortunate to be at the tail end of that where they were hitting their peak. And I think, we were at such a young age coming up that 10, 12 years, we saw it and we peaked with it. And I think the whole journey, it doesn't just start or end with the state championship game. And that's what you can't really explain that to people. But in short terms, like Danny said, I don't really talk about it too much, but because it's just, you're proud of it, but you can't really explain it to somebody who hasn't been through it or lived it because it's just a different experience than a lot of people get to go through, I think.
Yeah, and for me, I had to show everybody at Penn what North Tonawanda football was like. So you show up the first day as a freshman and you get thrown into a whole line of 12 guys and they're all running backs and every one of them's a captain. And you start talking to the kid next to you who you just met. And he says, yeah, well, I was the captain of Mohr High School out of Ohio. And I go, wait a minute, that's nationally known. You're nationally famous. And I got to compete against you. And you come from North Tonawanda, you got that pride. And I said, I'm not going to let that intimidate me. And, by the time I was done, after 4 or 5 years at Penn, everybody knew where North Tonawanda was. And I think I did them proud. So it's a focus of pride. North Tonawanda football's pride.
We've talked about a lot of different things in this conversation. What would you like to bring up that I haven't asked?
Nothing.
You did a great job.
Comes on top of my mind.
I mean,
the only thing that we didn't touch was Dave Celeste. He got sick during the season. That was a big motivational point for us, especially our defensive line. That was kind of, again, it all boils down to how hard you want to work in pride and what are you playing for and who are you fighting for. And, our defensive line coach, Dave Celeste, was sick and we rallied because they missed states in that was 2002. Yep. They were a game away from potentially making the state run. And so,
he jumped right on.
We were fighting for him. Who were you playing for?
We had a lot of great people who came out and volunteered their time. And, when you're talking about a team of 50 guys, like I was talking about other people who don't get to have this experience, we had 12, 13 guys on our practice field watching us practice and coaching us up. You don't get better just by practicing. You get better by practicing.
Somebody's got to show you.
Somebody's
got to show you how
to
hit it back.
Todd O'Brien, I got Scott Moreno, and
Eric O'Brien,
they're
Kevin
down my back
Piper.
24/7, following me around practice. And if you're making a mistake at practice, that's why we didn't make mistakes in games. We had so many people.
We had 14 people watching us every day.
Yeah,
we were getting yelled at every day.
Yeah, but it was a lot of people put a lot of hard work into our run, and it's really, important that they get recognized just like all the players and obviously the fans and the parents. I think that's one thing we missed.
Guys, I want to thank you so much for joining me today on the North Tonawanda Football Hall of Fame YouTube channel. Best of luck to all of you guys. Good health to you moving forward. Dan and Joe, you got a great future ahead of you. John, we have a lot of years together, brother. But I want to thank you once again and be well and take care of yourselves. Thank you.
Hey, thank
Thanks,
you
Ed.
very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Nobody beats NT.